Look at his hand. Not the cross, not the crowd, not the sky. Just the hand. Nailed open against rough wood, the fingers curled in a way fingers were never meant to curl. Every few seconds it tightens. Then it shakes. Then it goes still again. That small movement is not pain. It is something stranger. To say a single word on a cross, a dying man has to push his whole body up against the nails in his feet, drag a breath into lungs that are slowly drowning, and force the air out past his teeth. One sentence costs him everything. One word is a small act of will against the entire weight of his own death. It is the 3rd hour of the day. Morning, the sun is still climbing, and the man on this cross has 6 hours left to live. In those 6 hours, he will speak only 7 times. 7 sentences, that is all. After 3 years of teaching crowds on hillsides, after sermons that turned the world upside down, the most important man who ever lived narrows his final words down to 7 short lines and then goes silent forever. We have written those 7 lines down. We have them in order, and when you lay them side by side and listen to them as one voice, breath after breath, something happens that no single verse can show you. You start to hear what a man says when he has nothing left to protect, no reputation to manage, no future to plan, no strength to waste. This is not a story about an execution. This is not a story about pain. This is not a story about death. This is a story about the last 7 things a person says when there is nothing left to hide. And I will be honest with you about something now, so you keep listening for it. One of these 7 lines is going to sound like the cry of a man God has abandoned. It is the darkest sentence in the entire Bible. For centuries, people have heard it and flinched. They thought it was the moment he broke, the moment he lost hope. They were wrong about that line. They were wrong in a way that changes everything. We will get to that one, but not yet. Because to understand the cry in the dark, you have to start in the light with the very first thing he says. While the soldiers are still kneeling at his feet, still hammering, still bargaining over who gets to keep his clothes. Stay with me, because his first word is not a scream. It is a prayer for the men holding the hammers. The first word is forgiveness. While the soldiers are still working, driving iron, testing the ropes, gambling over his coat in the dirt, he lifts himself up against the nails to speak. And what he says is not aimed at the crowd. It is not aimed at the religious leaders smirking below. It is aimed up to his Father on behalf of the very men whose hands are wet with his blood. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Sit with how strange that is. The first thing on his mind is not his own agony. It is their guilt. He is more worried about what this moment is doing to the souls of his executioners than about what the nails are doing to his body. The Roman soldier swinging the hammer is, in that moment, just a man doing a job he has done 100 times. He has no idea who he is killing, and the dying man looks down at him and covers him. Here is what most people miss. He does not say, "I forgive you." He asks the Father to forgive them. He is already doing the thing he came to do. He is standing between guilty people and the judgment they have earned, and he is taking the position of the one who pleads on their behalf. The first word from the cross is the whole rescue in miniature. But the soldiers are not the only guilty men on that hill. There are 2 others, one on each side, and one of them is about to say the bravest sentence of his life. The 2 men crucified beside him are criminals. We do not know their names from Scripture, though the old tradition gives one of them the name Dismas. At first, both of them mock him. Both, even dying men in their last hours, find the strength to spit insults. But somewhere in those hours, one of them goes quiet. He watches. He listens to a man pray for the people killing him, and something breaks open in him. He turns his cracked lips toward the middle cross and says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." That is all he asks, just to be remembered. A criminal, hours from death with nothing to offer, asks only not to be forgotten. And here is the second word. Today you will be with me in paradise. Not someday, not maybe. today. The Greek word here is paradisos, and it does not mean a vague cloud somewhere. It came from an old Persian word for a walled royal garden, the private park of a king, the most beautiful and protected place a person could imagine. He is telling a convicted criminal, today you walk through the king's gate, no probation, no waiting list. The thief did nothing but ask, and that was enough. Stop and feel the weight of that. The first person Jesus promises heaven to, by name in the moment of dying, is not a priest, not a disciple, not a good man. It is a criminal getting exactly what he deserved on the cross next to him. If the door is open wide enough for that man on his worst and final day, then you already know it is open wide enough for you. Now look down at the foot of the cross. There is a woman there. Her name is Mary. She is his mother. She held this man as a baby in a feeding trough in Bethlehem, and now she is watching soldiers gamble for his clothes. There is a particular kind of grief that has no word in any language, the grief of a mother outliving her child, and she is standing in it. Next to her is a young man, John, the disciple the Gospels simply call the one Jesus loved. Of all the men who followed him for 3 years, John is the only one recorded standing at the cross. The others ran, John stayed, and the dying man, with breath he can barely spare, arranges his mother's whole future in 2 short sentences. He looks at Mary and says, "Woman, behold your son." Then he looks at John and says, "Behold your mother." From this hour, John takes her into his own home. Think about what that costs him. He is suffocating. Every word is fire in his chest. And he spends some of his last breath not on a prayer, not on a sermon, but on making sure his mother will have someone to walk her home and a roof over her head when this is over. That is the third word. And if you have ever sat beside a hospital bed and watched someone you love spend their final fading strength, worrying about everyone in the room except themselves, you already understand this moment in your bones. The last words of a dying person tell you who they really were. And so far, every word out of his mouth has been for someone else. But the sky is about to change. Before we step into that darkness, take a breath he could not take freely. 3 words so far: forgiveness for the men who killed him, a promise of paradise for a dying criminal, a home for his grieving mother. 3 sentences, and not one of them was about his own pain. Every word spent on someone else. Now, the sun is at its highest point, the 6th hour, noon, and this is where it gets remarkable, because instead of getting brighter, the sky goes black. For 3 hours, the land goes dark, not the soft dark of evening. This is wrong dark, noon dark, the kind of black that makes the birds go silent and the soldiers stop gambling and look up. From the 6th hour to the 9th hour, from noon until 3 in the afternoon, something covers the sun over a man dying on a hill. The crowd that came to mock has gone quiet. Nobody is laughing now. And out of that darkness comes the 4th word, but it does not come as a whisper. It comes as a scream. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. He cries it out in his own language, loud enough that the people standing far back hear it. My God, why have you forsaken me? This is the line I promised you. This is the one that has made people flinch for 2,000 years, because on the surface, it sounds like the end of hope. It sounds like a man who has finally been crushed, abandoned not just by his friends, who ran, not just by the crowd, who jeered, but by God himself. The forgiving man, the man who promised paradise, the man who provided for his mother, now sounds utterly, cosmically alone. And here is the hardest part to sit with. In some real way, he was alone. Something happened in that darkness between the Father and the Son that we do not have words for. The one who had never known separation for the first time tastes it. He is not pretending. The cry is real. But stay with me, because there is something underneath this cry that the people standing closest would have caught instantly, and that we, 2,000 years later, almost always miss. We will come back to it, because right now, in the dark, the most powerful man in history is also just a man, and he is dying the slow way. Crucifixion does not kill quickly, and it does not kill cleanly. The body hangs by the arms, the chest is pulled tight, the lungs cannot empty until the victim pushes up on shattered feet just to breathe out. Death comes by slow suffocation, hour after hour, and it makes you desperately, burningly thirsty. So the fifth word is the shortest of them all, 2 syllables. The most human thing he says on the entire cross. I thirst. That is it. The man through whom, the Gospel of John says, the oceans were made. The one who told a woman at a well that he could give her living water so she would never thirst again, now gasps 2 words because his body is a desert. And yet even this was written down centuries before. In an old song of suffering, for my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. A soldier hears him, soaks a sponge in the cheap sour wine they drink on duty, lifts it on a stalk, and presses it to his lips. 2 words behind us now, 2 left. And the next one is not a cry of pain at all. It is a shout of victory, and it will finally unlock the meaning of that terrible cry in the dark. So let me give you what the people standing closest already knew. When a Jewish man in that crowd heard, my God, why have you forsaken me?" he did not hear the end of hope. He heard the first line of a song, because those exact words open one of the most famous poems in all of Hebrew scripture, the 22nd Psalm, written by King David 1,000 years earlier. And in that time and place, you did not quote a whole psalm out loud. You quoted the first line, and everyone who knew it filled in the rest in their own mind. It was like starting a song everybody knows and letting the room finish it. So what does that song actually say? It opens in total darkness. A man surrounded by enemies who mock him. A man whose bones are out of joint, whose strength is dried up, whose hands and feet are pierced. Written 1,000 years before anyone in Israel had ever seen a Roman cross. It even says they divide his garments and cast lots for his clothing. The soldiers were gambling for his coat in the exact words of a song written 10 centuries before they were born. But here is the part nobody tells you. That psalm does not end in the dark. It climbs. By its final lines, it is no longer weeping. It is shouting that God has not despised the suffering one, that future generations will hear about this, that people not yet born will be told what God has done. The song that begins, "Why have you forsaken me?" ends with the whole world turning to worship. So when he cried out that line, he was not telling us he had lost. He was telling us where we were in the story. He was pointing to the one psalm that starts in a pit and ends on a throne, and saying in effect, this is that. Watch how it ends. And then he shows us how it ends. He gathers himself one last time, and the 6th word is not a groan. It is a single Greek word, and it is a shout. Tetelestai. We translate it. It is finished, but that is almost too soft. Tetelestai was an everyday word in the ancient world. Merchants wrote it across the bottom of a bill when a debt had been completely settled. One word, stamped on the paper. Paid in full, nothing left owing, nothing more to add. So this is not a dying man whispering, "I'm done." This is a man announcing that the thing he came to do is accomplished, complete, sealed. The debt is cleared. The work is finished. He did not lose this fight. He finished it. And then, having shouted his victory, he does one more thing, and this is the 7th word, the last one, and it is the gentlest of them all. "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." He came back to the same word he started with. Father. The cry in the dark is over. He is not asking why anymore. He is going home. And notice, no one takes his life from him here. He gives it. He commits it. The way you hand something precious into trusted hands, knowing it is safe. The Gospels say he bowed his head, and only then did he let go. A Roman officer was standing close enough to watch all of it. The centurion, a hardened soldier who had almost certainly overseen executions like this many times before. He had heard men curse on crosses. He had heard them beg, scream, blame. He had never heard a man forgive his killers, promise paradise, settle his mother's future, and then hand his own spirit to God like a child climbing into a father's arms. And that soldier, who came to do a job, looks up at the silent cross and says the truest thing anyone says in the whole account. Surely this man was the Son of God. The man who came to kill him is the first to confess him. So let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of this. First, these 7 words were never 7 separate sayings. Lay them end to end, and they are one complete path, from forgive them to into your hands. He starts by forgiving his enemies and ends by trusting his Father, and every step in between belongs to the same walk home. You did not just hear 7 quotes today, you heard one man cross the whole distance from a cross to a kingdom out loud. Second, notice who those words were for. Forgiveness for his killers, paradise for a criminal, a home for his mother. Even the cry in the dark pointed to a song meant to give hope to people not yet born. Of his 7 last sentences, almost every one was spent on somebody else. When he had nothing left, what came out of him was not bitterness. It was love with someone else's name on it. That is who he really was, with everything stripped away. And third, the one I want you to actually take home. Tetelestai, paid in full. Whatever you are carrying right now, the debt you cannot settle, the failure you keep rehearsing at 2 in the morning, the thing you are sure puts you outside the gate. Listen to the 6th word again. He did not say try harder. He did not say almost. He said the debt is settled, paid in full. If a criminal with nothing to offer could hear today, you will be with me, then the door is not too narrow for you either. So here is what I want to know. Of these 7 words, forgiveness, paradise, his mother, the cry in the dark, the thirst, the victory shout, the final breath, which one reached in and touched something in you? Tell me which one in the comments. I read them, and I think your answer might mean more to someone else reading it than you know. When the 7th word was spoken, the Gospels say he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. And then silence. The hammers were quiet. The mockers were quiet. Even the sky had gone still. 7 words, 6 hours, 1 breath at a time. And every single one of them spent on you.